I'm taking a nap right now. Alright.
Take a nap at
So-
9 at night. Let's go.
We'll just start out with going block names so we can reference them. I'm sure you guys all know, most commonly referred to as Dorito or Station. This one here, just outside Tunnel. You have Stacks or Double Diamond. Double Diamond is usually the most common name that's heard. The one you guys are all sitting on there is Bowtie. The one up here, I've heard it referred to as Heaven or anything else, Treetop, but most commonly it's gone by Cloud.
Yeah, Cloud.
90% of players will call this one Cloud. You'll hear other names on occasion, but there's a really popular shot called Cloud Shot, and that kind of made the name Cloud stick.
Yeah, it's what's it? If it's from Double Diamond, you bounce off Cloud. Something like that.
Roughly.
Yeah, it's weird, yeah. Yeah, we're starting with the most popular, so the next one's Pac-Man over here. Or I've heard it called Hourglass as well, but Pac-Man seems to be the most common. Have Pebble or Dot or Mini. There's a lot of cost. Nugget, yeah. I think Nugget's the
Nugget,
one
I think,
now.
is the most common one.
Nugget's the new player.
When I was
Nugget
starting to
and
50, it
Floyd.
was Pebble.
Yeah.
You have Nest up here. This one's pretty unanimous with the callouts. Then we have Shoulder. Imagine this is like kind of one giant person. You have two shoulders and then two boots down low. They're also called Frame.
And Heaven.
And
Never.
then real quick, going with that, you have this block. This block has a lot of different names. One of them is called Elbow, going with the boot and shoulder. The more common one though is usually Cherry or Ghost because Pac-Man is right here eating it basically.
Yeah, that's the next one I was gonna touch on. It's a lesser known.
Yeah, I was just doing this one because Elbow went with the shoulder and
that's true.
My team
You have
switched shoulder to that one and called it Heaven.
Heaven used to be called, I think it was Cloud, or was it? It was the Top Trench. It was either of those.
I've heard Stars called Heaven.
That's true. That can be it as well. This is a shield, barrier, or glass, whichever. I've heard all three. You have pillar, totem, stick. You know, yeah, a lot.
Anything
Yeah, I've heard stick.
whole
more times.
like.
Yeah, exactly. We have the
Wasn't
one
there
down
another one
here.
on Discord? I forgot what it was.
Probably. I don't know every single call out. There's too many to keep track of. This one here I've heard called Diamond. I've heard called Gem. I've heard called Anchor. I think Diamond's the most popular for it. You have these two.
Diamond or
kind of,
Gem, I think.
I don't think Diamond's that popular. We have these two, the ones that Alduine and I are sitting on. These are, I've heard it called Fog and Diamond are the main two.
Root, no. The
Root as well, yeah.
Yeah, Root I think
What
is
was
the
it?
most common one I've heard because Cloud used to be called Tree. It is no longer called Tree. But so this was the block below Cloud, so it started being called Root. And
This was Root?
Yeah, this was Root. It's like tree goes down all the way to Root.
but yeah,
essentially.
people started calling it Fog because it's below the clouds, as well as Ship.
I've heard.
As well as what?
Ship, like a boat.
I have not heard that one.
A
Moving on.
lot
That ship
of
is mainland.
like season 1 bronze teams called it Ship.
Interesting. You know, Trench, everyone knows Trench. That's, you know.
And then
obvious.
above is just
Unanimous.
Top Trench.
Yeah,
usually.
top Trench, Sky. Arch, I haven't heard that one. We have this over here,
I
which
actually like Arch.
pretty sure most people go by Popcorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the most common one now.
Yeah, popcorn is the most common. You'll hear cluster, I think, is the next most common, followed by apple. Apple, again, coming from the old tree thing.
Yeah,
the
weird
apple's
names,
not
you know.
too far from the tree. Got it.
Oh yeah. Down here, this one is called Trap commonly. I've heard it called
Just
Mine
always
before.
strapped down here.
Yeah, exactly. This one's fairly intuitive.
I was planning to call it Dice with my team. Because, you know, once you get there, it's like 50% chance which team gets it.
Yeah.
And,
Those
and
are
then,
pretty much all the basic callouts that you need.
these two
You
are
can-
actually
do you-
relatively common. On
Yeah, they don't
Jousts,
have
if-
they don't have
if here's
common
a team.
names rather.
Yes, they do. Heaven or Star.
Why?
Sure, I do learn this before I was playing VRML.
You said Star?
Ah. Yeah, Heaven
Star is
or
the one
Star.
we use as well.
Yeah, I think Star is a little bit more common.
I'm gonna post that one to my team, see if they like that one.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's a
we all
common
need to
go back to
There's a common QB or a common QB play is you'll come out, send people to the tubes or whatever, and then send one person up here because it's actually pretty hard for the stack coming through to get there.
Hey, strawberry got here. Good for him.
Makes sense.
All right. Let's see what next we touch on. We should probably touch on positioning then, as like the next de facto advancement.
Well, and to start with positioning, can we get everyone's roles, just so we know kind of what to be focusing on for this stuff? So how many people here are goalies?
If any. I know Straw is. Yeah, Straw's coming down
I'm
here.
trying to become
Yeah.
one. I am not one.
And
Go
Tuyo
over.
is one,
be
Gizmo
next
wants to be
Alduine.
one, and
Go over next to
Steel is
Alduine
one.
if you're. Yeah.
Nah, you can be a jerk to me, I'll still like you.
What's up, Strawberry?
Just don't call me
How's it
trash
going?
because you have more games than me.
And the rest, I assume, mid and strikers.
Mid striker.
Unless there's something
Well,
else.
is
that I
anyone
don't know.
here like specializing in mid?
Oh boy. Then
Or
things
brawler?
could be
Is
be
anyone
real complex at that point.
Specializing in mid.
Yeah.
If you want to specialize in mid, master goalie, and then master goalie and master striker, and then
That sounds
learn
like
how to play mid.
Gotcha.
For now, just one of your strikers plays mid.
There's
Or
two
you're not
basic.
gonna go
There's two basic kind of positioning styles that you need to know. You have when you're on offense and when you're on defense. Let's start with the defensive.
Okay.
Because then that'll help us talk about offensive. So your
So-
basic. This kind of ties into when you're in the bubble defense essentially.
When,
Your
when you're on
basic-
defense,
ahead.
your linchpin is your goalie. Your goalie is kind of going to be the shot caller in these situations, and they should be communicating what's going on in the field with your entire team. Right now, we are not talking about the transition from offense to defense,
No,
as we can
just
probably get into that
basic
later.
defense,
But this is
yeah.
when everyone's set up on defense, you're 4v4 around the bubble-ish. Your goalie is usually going to be set up here. They might be out jumping around on the blocks or wherever, just positioning to assist as they get the opportunity to jump out for a moment and do things. And I can get into more of the goalie play later today. But your goalie is going to be here, and their main job is calling out where the opponent is that are not covered. So there's going to be 4 orange people or 3 orange people around here waiting for passes, cut passes, all that sort of stuff to come in and pressure the goalie. And your teammates are going to be out there covering those people. And so it's their job to, usually there's 2 defensive modes. You have man defense, which is a little bit easier to start with, and then you also have zone defense. So for man defense, each of them is going to grab a man, and they're going to try to block that person, going in for stuns, blocking pass lanes to them, etc. Just making sure that one person doesn't get the disc. The goalie is going to be here, and they're going to be calling out, hey, there's someone on the right boot that no one's covering. Someone needs to go cover that. And if they have the ability, even directing one of your own teammates to be like, hey, Bendy, go cover right boot. That sort of stuff. As well as there are 4 people and you only have 3 people here. So if you see something coming in, you might need to tell someone, hey, switch to covering this person, they're doing something. They're coming in with the disc, they're coming in for a cut pass, whatever, that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of the man defense. For zone defense, I haven't played it personally. I don't know if Single can talk on that at all.
Zone defense is hard. It doesn't work as well in arena as you think it would in other sports. The main idea is that you have someone sitting towards like the right wing, the left wing, and someone's center, and obviously your goalie. The idea is when someone enters your zone, that you're gonna hard pressure them and not let them get any closer. The thing is, people don't on offense stick to the same areas. They can cross over, and that's when it gets confusing. It works, but man's just kind of easier, so most teams run with that.
Yeah, so zone defense is a method. If you've seen my goalie video, it's kind of going to be how I will teach someone two-handed goaling. Block goaling is a thing. It is not necessarily my specialty anymore. And so I'm focusing on the man defense because that's what you'll see more often. And that's what I would recommend at least starting with for now.
So we'll get into the actual, like, that's the theory of how all the positioning is going to be. Your main actual positions, you're going to have one person in the goal, and so you have 4 people lined up around the bubble, like Straw, Steel, Sky, and Gizmo here. You're all assuming offenders here. So if we're on man defense and Bendy has the disc here, I'm going to be up here trying to either stop the shot, so I'm going to be in between you and the goal, or in between another player. Positioning on defense isn't so much as I'm going to sit on pillar here and just not let anyone get past me. It's you have to move around. So he's trying to pass to Gizmo here. I don't have to be sitting on Gizmo going for the stun every 2 seconds. If I'm between you two, he doesn't get the pass unless he gets past me and I don't notice. So, like, my main job, if I'm a defender sitting around the bubble, is to stop a pass lane or stop the shot lane. There's not a set
and if that person
position.
ends up getting away from the defender when they have their back turned, the goalie should be calling, "Hey, he got away. Go cover him here."
Yeah, exactly. On defense, the goalie is the goalie is just the most important player in this game.
Yeah, the goalie is the
99% of
linchpin
the
on
time.
defense. They are the shot caller and the communicator for the team. Everyone else should be talking about their situation. If you get stunned out and the person you're covering is going in for a cut pass, you need to be calling, "Hey, my guy, I got slipped," or whatever. Cut from the right, cut from the left, or whatever. Just calling out that's coming, or watch the stun, anything like that. Calling out what the other team is getting ready to do if they got past you. And so communication from everyone is important. It shouldn't be something where only the goalie is talking, but the goalie should be talking the most because they have the most information to convey. Oh, someone dropped.
Someone crash?
No. Wait.
Whoever
Not
was
that I
standing
know.
between Gizmo and Bendy.
Ah,
Oh. And that was illegal?
There's someone there and they just disappeared.
That was too illegal?
draw? No, no, legal still on the party. I don't know where he is.
Uh,
No, legal.
Tool just left party.
Yeah, I'll invite him back. And if you guys need to clarify for us to clarify something on the defense, it's just positioning in general.
Yes, please feel free to ask questions.
If not, we're going to offensive positioning.
So, one other thing though, real quick, as a goalie and as other people, if someone is sitting here trying to stun me out while I'm in the goal, the last thing I want or my teammate should do is to have another teammate come up and try to help get them off me. Because when they're on me, that then puts us man on man out there and there's no loose person. So at that point, what you want is your 3 teammates to hard pressure and cover every option that the disc holder has while pressuring the disc. And I'm just going to be here. I'm not going to be able to do much, but if they came in and tried to help me, we'd both get locked down here and they'd have advantage with the disc pushing in still, and there wouldn't be a goalie in goal because they'd likely be stunned out with the other person here. So that is the one big thing you want to make sure doesn't happen.
If there's no questions, we'll move on to offensive positioning. And this is where it gets fun, in my opinion. The goalie is still your more important player. They're not going to play a goalie anymore. They're going to be acting as your reset. Like if you're
So
further
if we're an orange team going that way,
yeah. If you want say we're orange team, we're pushing, we're trying to get to the goal. Your goalie's going to be your furthest back pass here.
yeah. So
He's
I'm
always
gonna be the
going to be the
pass.
one that's
And so as
the
he's coming up,
safest.
I'm going to be reset double if he needs it. When I call it, it doesn't mean he has to throw it to me. It means, hey, if you're in a bad situation or whatever, know that I'm here and you can pass it to me. And if he continues to move up,
Yeah. And then if I get
if
too
he
pressure,
continues
I
to move
can get it back.
yeah. So if he's moving up, I can be like, hey, I'm moving, and ideally you want to call that you're moving a little bit before you actually start moving. And so I'd call going to bow tie, I'd wait a second or two, and then I'd move up to bow tie. Then once I get to bow tie, reset bow tie.
Yeah. You never want your goalie to be like all the way back at your goal or your bow tie. You always
Yeah.
want them to still be in the play, but not too deep in the play where they're covered.
There is a really strong meta right now of a lot of the new players are coming in and the goalie is just sitting in the goal. I was a sub in a game yesterday and I just played super casually and stuff, but they had a goalie. I don't think he ever left the goal frame. I ended up taking a little bit over a half court shot, and it didn't go in. But I noticed after I threw it, I turned the corner, and the goalie was sitting in their goal frame when I shot it from like here.
If you wanted the reason for why that's bad, I'll go into it in a second. But when you're kind of pushing onto the bubble, it's going to be a 4-on-3. Offense has the advantage. You have 3 defenders plus 1 goalie. The goalie can't come out of goal, or you have the open shot. So you have 4 people. You have 3 like main offenders here, and 3 main defenders. If you can pass that back to your goal, say he's like on the both side there. Suddenly we have 4 people on the attack, and they only can cover 3 people. So we have the numbers advantage. We can have that win. If you have your goalie back at your goal, you have 3-on-3, and you have to either play very, very smart, or you lose that offense. It's a numbers game. The entire game is a numbers game.
Yeah, so having that option is crucial. And I can go into some of the goalie positioning stuff in a minute, because a lot of that is really weird at lower ranks, because there's such vast differences in pacing. But for now, definitely having the goalie come up somewhere that they are a reset pass option. And then when that reset happens, a few things can happen. If you're up points, there's no reason. You can just sit here indefinitely until they send someone out at you. They send someone out at you. Now I have an open pass. I can make that pass, and they can likely take it in for at least a shot attempt. Conversely, if we're down points, you can kind of play it by ear. If you're down 2 points and there's 8 minutes left in the game, I can still sit here. But if there's 30 seconds left and we're down 2 points, then I don't want to sit here. I'm going to want to come up and force someone to pressure me while I try to walk it in the goal, and just be ready to, if no one comes to pressure me, take that shot, or if someone does come to pressure me, being able to pass it off to whoever the now open teammate is.
So this has all been goalie positioning. Now we're actually talking about what the other 3 people are going to do. Let's say Alduine's on double diamond, if you want to go over there for me. You have 3 other, your mid and your 2 strikers usually, or 2 mids and a striker, play that way. You don't want to be like the way Gizmo's Steel and Straw right now, how they're right next to each other. You're too close. You have no passes. Essentially, you got to think of it the same way how I said zone works earlier. You got that kind of left. Oh, I think Spider crashed. I'm gonna be in bed. You have that like left player. You have the one on the right, and then you have the kind of like center. When you all right, cool. You always want to be sort of across from your player. Like Bendy's here, I'm here. I want to be in the same lane. Like I don't want to be way back here, because that makes it a harder pass for him. I want to be essentially in line with him, but I don't have to be in line vertically. Like, I can be all the way up here, and that's still a good pass. You just don't want to be too far, because then I put myself at a harder angle. When you actually get to the bubble is where it becomes a little bit harder, because then you have sort of your left player here-ish. They're getting close. Your right player can be blocked by the shield in a number of positions, so you have to kind of revert to that mid. One huge pet peeve of mine on defense is going right to the goal, or on offense, rather. Going right to the goal, sure, you can get the stun or maybe the dunk, but you're also taking yourself out of the play. The goalie's right here. He's covering you. You're sitting on the rim, or even like right here-ish, anywhere around this backboard, you're being covered by the goalie and turning into a 3v3, essentially in the bubble. So you want to be close enough to the goal where you can take a shot, but far enough away where they can't jump you. Like up here is really good, because the goalie's not going to jump you from here, and you can still easily come in and just hit it backside.
Also coming, kind of depending on the goalie's position and where your teammate is, if someone was coming in with the disc from Ness, I could perch up right here, and now the goalie can pass it to me, and I can slap it down really fast into the goal. Now, if they were coming from the bottom and they were to pass it here, the goalie could really easily grab that. And so if they're coming from the bottom, I'd want to instead be down here so I could shoot it up. And conversely, you have all around this, and especially at the low to mid ranks, being on, we call this clock, but most people just call it backboard. Being on the backboard will be really strong in those low ranks because the goalie doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Generally, where my team and where I advise position is at the very outside, almost at the bubble. That's like the safest. Because once you get up the ranks, yeah, like Alduine said, work mid. But when you're up that higher level, if you are anywhere close to the goal, you're either a bad position and you can't get a pass off, or the goalie can jump you. Obviously, while you're doing all this, you can't just sit here waiting for a pass because the defender is just going to sit right on top of you. You have to be constantly moving around, constantly opening yourself up for that pass, that split second, and knowing where your other passes are. If you end up
And you want to make sure that while you're moving, if Single is over there trying to get a pass, I want to make sure that I don't try to run away from someone behind me and run over here so that now I'm on top of Single, and now we can both be covered by a single person. So just kind of trying to lose the person covering you while also trying to keep some distance from your teammates so you have more pass, or so the person with the disc has more pass options, as well as keeping a line of sight on the person with the disc. So if they were on the cross floor there, I wouldn't necessarily want to be here because it might be a hard angle with boot there in the way. That sort of stuff.
Positioning is something that as you play more, you just kind of get a feel of where you're supposed to be and where you need to, where's your best opportunity. But it's going to be hard to start now because when you're starting out, you'll go here and say, hey, this is the perfect position for a pass. But you stay there too long and now you're covered, or they pass it to you and then you were staying there too long and you're still covered and they get the disc. The last thing you want is a turnover. Anything we need to clarify offense-wise? All right, sounds good.
Do we want to do? I think practice will probably be one of the last things we cover because there's still more things that we're going to talk about, and we can kind of cover everything then.
Yeah, drills for everything. We'll go over pretty much all the drills later. Yeah, when we do it. Positioning we have a good one before as well.
Do we want to go over shooting on a goalie?
Yeah, and just one more thing I want to note about positioning is if the guy with the disc, say Bendy, hold that for a second. I want to always make sure I have a sight line on Bendy. If I'm here, sure, I'm a safe pass, but how is he going to pass it to me here? I'll make sure you can see him and he can see you clearly. That'll help you out 9 times out of 10. Let's do that. All right, and then next thing we're going to go into is like Alduine suggested here, shooting on a goalie or just putting your bubble offense into play.
Yeah, so it's going from offense to attempting a shot. And it might be something that a single player is doing. It might be a quarter court, half court sort of thing. It might be a cut play, whatever. And so you're going to have several options. To start, I can go over 1v1ing a goalie. So goalies, they always have a weakness based off of how they are. I'm going to start. You have two main types of goalies. You have block goalies and two-hand goalies. And depending on what they're doing at the time, they might, if it's a better goalie, they might be switching off depending on the situation. And so it's always good to be watching what they're doing with both their hands as you're approaching. But so for a two-handed goalie, the weakness is pretty easy. It's really easy to come over here and reach to either of those. It's really easy to reach through the backboard, do any of that. The main weakness of a two-handed goalie is getting to the top pocket or the bottom pocket because you have to jump or crouch usually. And it's really easy to be offset. It's hard to not be perfectly centered. It's really easy to be offset slightly high or low if you're setting up quickly. And if I were to set up here, now there's a huge gap above me and I can't reach up there. And so if you're able to put the disc up in this top pocket, you're going to have a much better time scoring on that goalie. In addition, a two-handed goalie, you don't really have to worry about them jumping out to try to stun you too much because I can't move that fast unless I slap off the block, which at your guys' level, you might not run into too much. And I don't know, I see too many people slap off for jumping.
Not many. If they are going to jump, their hands are.
They'll be holding. Yeah. So the other one is one-handed goalies. So weakness of one-handed goalies, they can reach 3 pockets really easily because they just move their hands in opposite directions. My weakness is getting to that pocket. To get to that pocket, I either need to jump completely or I need to switch hands, which both allow for mistakes and take more time. than getting these other 3 pockets. So a block goalie, you want to shoot, you want to try to aim for their cross side. Now that changes slightly. If Single's coming at me from right there, I'm kind of even because I only need to reach about here to cover this pocket from his shot. So from there, I can really cover the entire goal. Block goalies do have a little bit of a harder time jumping or trying to get bounce shots. But with that said, if you're against a good goalie, it's not really going to be that much of an inhibitor. It doesn't take more time. It just takes a little bit more skill because it's a more dynamic action than just taking a step back because they have to throw off usually. Some people can just. Did they move this block?
Yeah, it's closer to the goal than it used to be. Well, that was like a few months ago. You might not have been here for it.
Interesting. I used to barely be able to reach the goal frame. Now my head's in the middle of it.
Yeah, they moved quite a bit further. Anyway,
That's
that's
so
like
much.
from a goal. That's like from a goalie mindset. I am not a
Yeah.
goalie, so I'll show you essentially the way I like to.
Yeah, so the last one, a block goalie has a much easier time of jumping out. So if you're really trying to go in for that dunk, you just need to be ready for them to jump out and try to stun you and grab the disc. Because it's really easy for block goalies to do that.
Right
May I ask
now.
a question?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
What are some of the steps and like rules that you're following in your head that determine whether or not you're gonna go two-hand or block in any given situation?
It depends on what I think they're doing. If I think they're going for, if they're coming up and trying to 1v1 me and bring it in really close, a lot of times I'll block or I'll try to jump out on them because I'll have a better chance of saving that than them coming in and doing a weird spin to get around me, because those are pretty hard to deal with, especially against more competent players. For someone, if they're coming in for like a cut play, I'm usually going to want to be two-handed because if I jump out on them, they have the option to pass the teammate. If I jump out on the teammate, they have the option to just take the shot. And then the last option would be to just intercept the pass as it's thrown or jump out on the teammate as he gets the disc. And both of those are good options if you can pull them off. In my opinion, though, a lot of times when a cut comes through, they aren't aiming really hard for a pocket or anything, so it's really easy to just kind of be here guarding this person and then rotate over to the other person and try to get that disc because they likely won't be trying to take a really nice angle shot. And beyond that, it changes from situation to situation. As you play more, you'll know the people you're playing against and what their tendencies are, and learning their tendencies is huge. For example, if you ever play with Game, he has a big tendency to shoot for the bottom pocket. Ryan has a big tendency to take anchor threes, etc. And being able to know how to deal with each individual player as you play against them, and learning what their tendencies are, trying to find patterns even throughout the course of a game or a single round as to what a single player is doing.
More on that part. I like the last mention that you have to learn. I know some of the top goalies literally have it in their head of every striker that they've met, how they throw and where they're going to throw before the striker even knows. Yeah. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I was
point of
talking
view,
to Mad about a week ago, who is he King?
Matt's King, yeah.
Yeah, he's King's goalie. And I was saying, hey, what's the difference between a good goalie and a master goalie? And it was really just learning every single person, every single striker, and all of their tendencies and how to deal with each and every single person individually. So that's kind of what it takes to get to the top. And you're not expected to learn every single person, especially down at the lower ranks when there aren't 3 or 4 top teams competing that you're worried about, and there are 20, 30, 40 teams around you that you have to be worried about. But if you can read even a little bit from what they're doing in a game or some tendency that they have, even going into other things, if you're on Joust and they're always throwing, and when they have QB, they're always throwing to the right tube, or 80% of the time they're throwing to the right tube. Recognizing that stuff, those patterns and tendencies, and adapting your team's strategies to deal with that.
That's why the goalie is the most important player on the team. Jesus. A lot of stuff
I
for
have
them to
another
know.
question.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
I've seen some goalies play frame, basically.
Oh yeah. So
What's your
back to
opinion on that?
block goaling. So I used to be exclusively a block goalie. Since then, I've switched to a hybrid where, so I was block goalie and then I switched to exclusive two-hand, and now I play hybrid where I'll do both. As a hybrid goalie, I almost never hold on to these, because if someone's coming from a tight angle, I'm going to have a better chance with two hands. However, if someone is an exclusive block goalie, if someone's coming from a side, it's advantageous to move onto one of the frames here to try to get the save rather than sitting here. And so that's kind of how a goalie would play as someone striking on that. If they're here, if they're on the top side, bottom pocket's really weak. If they're down here, top pocket's really weak, etc. As well as the cross pocket if you're coming from more straight on. If you're coming from a tight angle, you're going to have trouble with either the two side pockets.
One thing I was playing for Canada to tell me how to play goal, but one thing that helped me was here. You have that extra like time for the reaction time because on pillar, so it's saved here versus here is a lot different in my mind. It's just that extra second, not really a second, but helped me a lot. That was when I was getting to know it, so I'm not the best one. Let me clarify, definitely not. But that's what helped me. Anything else? All right. So
Yeah, what's up? Strawberries.
Did you have something? What's up?
Yeah, one more thing. How much do you rely on like the visual tells, like how somebody's arms are positioned?
A lot.
For hand placement, and how much is just like where their placement around the goal is?
There's a ton to it. I don't know if you've watched my goalie boot camp from a few weeks ago, but I go over that in a lot more detail in there, as well as a lot of other more goalie focused stuff.
Check it out.
But there are three main factors. One is what they're doing with their arm. The other is where they're looking, especially at the lower levels. They're going to be looking where they're throwing. And then the third is what your weakness is. So if I'm an exclusive block goalie and I'm here, I know that my bottom pocket is weak, and so I'm expecting a shot down there. And that one in particular, knowing where your weakness is comes into play more once you start going against players who are aiming for the pockets rather than just the goal. But yeah, being able to read their arm and their face is huge, and there's a ton to that, and it's prediction.
All right, good. Where were we? We were shooting on a goalie from my perspective, essentially. Which, if you want to go here, you can see exactly what I mean, where my head is. I can see Alduine's got this. Right now, he's dead center, so anything around the very edge rim is where he's most open. However, he's leaning slightly to the right on my side, but I can also tell he's covering that cross pocket. Well, that's because I know him apart. Like if I was here, my first thought for the angle isn't the wide open area because I know he's gonna bait it. My first decision is actually gonna be hitting right here, mainly because I know he won't jump that area.
So, in my perspective, on that note, so I have a couple spots that I'm covering. I'm here. I'm ready to reach to both of these, and I'm also kind of like preloading some energy to spring out in one direction. But with that said, it's hard to cover four areas of the goal like that. You can only really get three major areas, and so if he can predict. If he can see the two spots I'm covering and the one spot that I'm preloading, which he noticed as I was leaning to the left, that's because I have a bunch of energy to really shoot myself out to the right side because my hips are already sticking out to my right now. My legs really spread. They're here and here. My hip is basically over my right leg, and then my head is over my left leg, and then I'm able to kind of really pop over quickly. And so he can read that and see where to shoot.
That's something you'll see at the very, very higher levels. The levels that the places that you'll more see are if Alduine's like positioned very to the right of the goal, he's leaving a huge gap open. If I'm coming from this area, I have a huge gap. Just generally shoot where you think the goalie isn't covering, or where the most open seems, and that'll work until you get up to the very highest levels. Because if he's positioned, well, obviously this is dramatization but here, but he's positioned there and he sees me coming in here.
If I'm positioned on this side, because you're coming from that side, a lot more goalies might favor coming all the way over here. But if they overcompensate, I can reach way past the goal frame, so it's completely unnecessary. And I have a hard time getting back to the far pocket, and so he can put it into that side of the goal.
Yeah. You just gotta figure out, shooting on a goalie is all about figuring out where they are and where they are not going to be able to get. Most of the time, it's just looking for the most open area.
Yeah.
Any questions about that? All right.
Were you raising your hand, Cecile?
No,
think
I
that was
was
no.
I was
Yep.
checking something now.
Oh, good.
No worries.
So, I think the next major skill is just cutting, right? So, does anyone here not know what a cut is? Okay, so cuts is the term for a play, and so what that will be, if we can demonstrate single. So single will be coming. So I have the disc right now. I'm coming in towards the goal with single. And instead of taking a shot on the goal, I throw it to him, and he throws it in from another angle at a close range, and it gives the goalie very little time to accommodate from that.
So, yeah,
That's a straight.
he's hitting over there. And the goalie's obviously focused on him. If he hits me while I'm within as close to the goal, the goalie has to, one, turn entirely 90 degrees from where Alduine was standing. Two, have his reaction time, and I'm probably already in the middle of throwing the disc. I'm not going to sit here and wait for the goalie to get adjusted. It's very powerful when you can do it right.
And so cutting is a strategy you see all the way up to the highest level of gameplay. At the highest level of gameplay, I think it's still probably the most common shot in the game.
I think it's the only way you can score on some of the higher goalies. Unless you have the perfectly placed shot, you need to have that extra pass to disorientate the goalie.
Yeah. If there's not a goalie, there's no reason to do the cut pass. It just adds for more mistakes. But if there is a goalie, I highly recommend learning cut plays and really trying to master those. They actually aren't that hard to do, at least to do generally. If you doing a cut pass and scoring on a rank 50 goalie versus doing a cut pass and scoring on a rank 1 goalie is a big difference. But if you can just get any sort of cut pass off, they're surprisingly easy to hit, both the pass and the shot, and your score percentages will go way up. So I highly recommend practicing your cut passes, and if there's a skill to master other than boosting is the most important skill. Please focus on that. Cut passing is probably the next most important thing, particularly for the strikers.
That's very easy.
Everyone should know.
I'll say Alduine's over there. It's probably the second easiest to practice other than boosting.
Yeah.
You can literally go to a private arena, go anywhere, and just tell your other teammate, hey, move in. I'll just throw a pass over there. If he gets it, puts it in, then good. Repeat that however many times it takes.
And if you have more of your team online, you can throw your goalie in the goal and have them try to save the disc. If you have another striker online, if there's 4 of you online or 3 strikers, you can have everyone kind of come in, and then you get pass options. The goalie's needing to now watch 3 people coming in, and they don't know exactly who the pass is going to, etc.
Any questions
Hey guys,
on
I've
cuts or
I've
pass
gotta
like that?
hop off. I had something come up. See?
See you,
Okay.
Steele. No worries, man.
Okay, what's up, Strawberry?
What are some tells for bounce passes? I noticed the first time I played a high level game, I couldn't read if they were going to bounce it or not. And they would have some crazy bounce shots off the backboard.
Bounce shots or bounce passes?
Bounces off the backboard, just like
Okay,
straight up.
so they're trying to just put it into the goal, not to another
from
teammate,
behind,
right?
yeah.
So for bounce shots, the tells for that, it's mostly going to be in their hand and their eyes. If you hop in goal real quick, I can show you this. So this first one, I'm not going to do what you're expecting, and it's more of just a visualization of, hey, look, there is something to like how they're looking and what I'm expecting them to do. And so you can kind of see it looked like I was going to throw it to one side, but I didn't. Oh, oops.
This is why I haven't been throwing the disc, actually. I don't want to chase it.
It's hard to demonstrate this without throwing it, though.
That's true.
So for this shot, I'm going to do another shot, and this is probably how a lot of the shots that you're going against are going to be right now. I'm going to be coming up like that. And it's really easy to see. I'm looking at the backboard, I'm moving my arm towards the backboard, etc. Watching the angle that they're coming up on, all of that sort of stuff. And then beyond that, reading the bounce, it just comes down to practice. People can throw off of here and off of the pyramid. The key to remember with if they're aiming for the pyramid is they're going to be coming from a much tighter angle. And so if someone was here, I don't have a shot off the normal backboard, which would cause it to go towards the far side. I'd have to instead shoot it off the pyramid, in which case you know it's coming to this side of the goal. Versus if I was coming from here, I don't have a shot off the pyramid. I have to shoot it off the normal backboard, in which case it's going to this side. And then there's a really gray area where they can be right in between, and then it goes either here or here, and those just suck.
An easy way to tell if they're going for the pyramid or the standard backboard, take a look at this pillar. If they're on this side of the pillar, they have to hit the pyramid because it's going to be a lot harder of an angle.
Actually, from right there, you can put it into both pockets.
Well, okay, assuming player isn't
So,
extremely high level.
Right here, this angle right here is the danger area because they get three angles. They have straight at the goal, they have off the right side of the backboard and the left side of the pyramid, and that will cause it straight in goes anywhere I put it. Right side goes to the far pocket, left side of the pyramid goes to the close pocket. And so it's a really dangerous area. If they're farther this way, know that it's going for the pyramid. If they're farther this way, know that it's going for the backboard.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to look for the gaze. I haven't been doing that. I'm gonna start like looking at their head position, and that's a good shot.
There are very few people who will bait their head position. And you don't really see that until really high level. Even single doesn't. I can read single shots, doesn't mean I can save them though.
You can read, but you can't save them.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, top pocket, it's by. Oh, bottom pocket, it's gone. Oh, side pocket, it's gone.
Okay, this is good. All right. Any other questions on that, or should we move on? All right, looks like we're good. Let's touch on boosting. We haven't really, well, we said it's most important, but we haven't really touched on it. Boosting as a team is a lot different from just going into a pub and boosting with a random person that you find. The idea is that you're more coordinated with your team. You can take more, I don't want to say risks, but more adventurous things. Like if the disc is, say, over at Bowtie and I'm here to stack with, oh, Gizmo dropped. Can you read my Gizmo if you have him? Or do you want me to grab him?
I do not have him. He didn't add me.
Let me invite him.
I don't think anyway.
If you want to say that 50 things about invite him.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, to start, does anyone not know what regrabbing is? That was not raising your hand, right, Bendy?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. So everyone knows what regrabbing is. Regrabbing is, you good, Toil? Did you have a question? Okay, regrabbing is the most important skill in the game. If your team is faster, you're going to be at a massive advantage. Especially at your guys' level, you will see a lot less passing teams and a lot more boost and clear teams where they'll get the disc and they'll throw it out and try to re-grab after it and be the first ones there. That's a really common low-level meta, probably more common than passing plays. Getting to passing plays is needed to break into high level, but it's a lot harder to do. So a lot of teams start with the boost and clear strategy. So a lot of teams are going to be really fast at it. Now with that said, the main differentiator between a fast team and a slow team isn't how fast is your top speed regrabbing. It instead comes down to how quickly or how consistent you are and how quickly you guys can group up. If you're the fastest boost pair in the league, but it takes you 10 seconds to find someone to boost with, you're going to lose your boost every time because the other team's going to get there before you and 10 seconds is a lot of time to clear the field. But then again, it takes you'll be surprised how many people it'll take 10 seconds just to group up and start their boost. And so learning to kind of keep an eye on where your teammates are and who's near you, so you're ready to boost out if anything happens, and just having that kind of subconscious tracking is a huge skill to have and will greatly speed up your gameplay and give you guys a huge advantage. Beyond that, though, when you actually go to regrab, your top speed isn't as important. It'll get important later, but for now, the most important thing is getting as close to 100% consistency as you can, pulling perfectly through your teammate so that you guys are able to go in the direction that you're choosing.
Yeah. No, it's like you said, it's not about your max speed. You can go, you have an infinitely straight plane, you can go as fast as you want, but very few times you're just going to head straight down the field with no change in direction. There's a lot more times where the disc takes a bounce and you need to arc left or do like the sharpest turn in your life. You got to figure out how you got to essentially think at the exact same time as the other person you're regrabbing with. Hey, are we going to stop, grab, and go, or are we going to try to turn with the speed we have? Same thing for even like the most minor bounces. Like if it bounces there and heads slightly down, are you guys going to adjust down, or are you just going to keep going at it until you can duck low enough?
Or do you want to, as you're approaching, pause your regrabbing for a second or two to not slow down, but keep yourself from speeding up so you can see where the bounce goes and then continue regrabbing?
Exactly. Regrabbing is all just about your chemistry with your teammates. You need to be able to have the same thing in your head that they do. You have to think the exact same thing, because if you're on the exact same page as your teammate, you're going to win the boost, or you're going to win the joust, or whatever you're trying to do 9 times out of 10. That's all about developing that chemistry with your teammates and knowing what they're going to do so you can react to it.
And if, say, Single was down at mini and he's going to score on the goal, and I'm boosting with, so me and Single are on different teams and he's trying to score on my goal. I'm boosting with a teammate here, being able to communicate, hey, I'm going to goal, you should go pressure the disc and break off your boost as you approach your target or whatever, so that the goalie gets back, or not even the goalie, just say the goalie's stranded down there. So someone is in the goal and someone's covering the disc, because if you both go for the disc, he can take a shot. If you both go for the goal, he has a lot less pressure. But if you're able to communicate, hey, let's split, and just knowing that each of you are going to do that, calling out, you go goal, or I'll go goal, or you go disc, etc., is really helpful. And just splitting off so you can get that pressure on faster will give you a huge advantage.
Same thing works for offense as well. If you have the disc and you're near someone, throw the disc down. If you guys are regrabbing to it, one of you grab the disc and stop. The other person can keep going forward. Because if Alduine goes forward, I grab the disc here. He goes down. He's instant an open pass. He's an open pass moving to wherever he wants in the field. He's not stuck right on top of me when I have the disc. It works both offense and defense. You just have to get the hang. Again, it goes back to chemistry with your teammates. You know what they're going to do, and you know what you do to react to it. Any questions about that?
I do have a question about regrouping. So, if we're trying to play a more controlling game and we're trying to get pass plays,
yeah,
then we're spread out on different sides of the field, right? Theoretically, one guy's up on the ceiling over here, the other guy's on the floor down over here. Do you have any tips or trips? What I meant to say there was, of course, tips or tricks for how to get back together quickly without getting stunned in the process.
That's essentially the same as when we talk about positioning earlier. You need to know where your teammates are, where you are. One of where the other striker that I work with a lot, he goes upside down, on like the roof or the cross. So I know in the instant that I boost, and I don't have to look. I can just jump, slap this direction. I know he's already coming to where I am, because he knows where I am, and I know where he is. When we meet in the middle, it cuts that time in half. You have to,
and then again, just kind of keeping a subconscious eye on them, so you know where to go. And beyond that, also, you don't if you're doing that and you're coming out, you don't want to have. So usually you'll be in like a diamond-like position in terms of your spacing is a pretty typical passing pattern to move up in. You don't necessarily want to have like one teammate at either trap and then the other teammate at orange double, because that's way too spread out. You should pull it back more. Maybe have someone like left pack, right Dorito, and maybe left star or something like that. Bringing it back a little bit closer instead of going for those really long passes, you'll find you'll increase your consistency more and your control.
What about when the opposing team is close? Because one of the biggest things that I see is if I'm on defense, which I play defense, and I see two guys from the other team getting ready to boost, I don't even go and look for the disc anymore. I just stun them because I take two players out of the game, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any tips for how to? Should I just not boost with my partner until we get rid of the other defender
That's when it gets complicated, because the benefit of you taking out a stack is that, hey, they no longer have a boost, but in doing that, you also stop you and one other teammate from getting down the field unless that other teammate gets a boost off an enemy.
So one way to think of it is how many people are you locking down? If you're getting a net gain on the number of people you're locking down, you should definitely go for it. If you can block out 2 or 3 of them and strand 1 or 2 of them, depending on the situation, that is the way to go. Now, with that said, the worst case situation is you're there, you stun them out, and you have another teammate back there who's now stranded back there with you. They start going, and then the boost pair comes back up and they get away from you. Now both of you are stranded and probably not right next to each other, and they're going to have the advantage downfield.
That's a good point.
As a rule of thumb, I generally like to go back to the other person I'm with and boost. The only time I'll actually stop and take out that stack is if it's like the whole team is stacking, or if my partner's already down the field and they got a leech from somewhere else. If I'm alone, then yeah, go for it. Otherwise, go for your stack, because it lets you see set up on your defense faster. It'll basically save more shots.
Yeah, so one really common situation for that would be when the QB is coming out, if they have a boost pair that pushes all the way at them, and the rest of your team's down there, you get your pass off successfully or whatnot, and then you get the opportunity to send out that boost pair, that is always a time that the QB should go for that boost pair if they have the opportunity. Best case is they can get a leech off them, pull through, and stun them. So now they get down to assist their own team while keeping those two back. But if you can just hold them back there, that's still really good.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
So
Gladly.
it's situational.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that you just have to get a feel for, of when you should, when you shouldn't. Let's see, what else? We were on boosting, we talked about boosting. Is there any other questions about boosting, or are we good with that? Sounds like we're good with boosting.
One other big thing, and this is something that I started doing more recently, when you're boosting, try to stick to kind of central lanes. There's no reason to go around weird blocks or take weird angles. Try to stick to pretty straight and straightforward paths, because it might be easy to boost through it, but your teammate might not be on the same page as you, and if you're taking a weird path, they might not be thinking to go that same route. And so communicating where you guys are going and taking the road most traveled is a good way to put it, is very beneficial in that regard.
Okay, that's another chemistry. I mean, boosting chemistry with your team will take you to the highest level. You need to have almost perfect chemistry.
If you're playing with people that you don't like, you don't get along with, that's fine for now, but I might recommend looking for other options, because ultimately you'll play better and you'll enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm. No more questions on that. We'll go to passing. Passing is fun. Shaw, did you have a question there?
Yeah, quick question. I guess related to more to jousting. Are we gonna cover that later, or?
We can cover jousting sure now, because that'll keep us on topic of the boosting.
Yeah, it involves boosting. How many teams are running their goalie as the QB? Is that something that I'm gonna have to learn how to do if I want to play goalie?
75 to 80%.
Most teams have their QB as goalie. It threw me
yeah.
off when I was on the team in preseason and the QB wasn't the goalie. It took a few weeks, so I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Good to
Because the idea of the idea of them being the QB is they're, again, keeping that they're always the furthest back
Yeah,
mentality.
they're the back line. And if someone else is doing that, usually you want to make sure that they are a decent goalie still. That way, if something happens, they get a bad clear out or whatever, and they need to fall back to the goal, that they stand a good chance in the goal.
All right. Good. We have to talk about the initial joust a bit. I know most of the initial joust that teams do is you have your two pair. You're basically usually your two strikers come out of this tunnel and they'll go for discs. Some teams like to send the other two, like the mid and back, at the same time, and basically just hope that they get the disc. I know a few other teams like to delay and hope that your team gets the disc and you become pass, but you're slightly delayed so the other team knows you're coming, or you can stop. Some people just like to entirely wait at goal. This essentially comes down to personal preference and what works for your team. If you guys know you're faster than the other team, you can just full send all the way down because you know you're going to win that joust. You might as well set up for offense. But the personal preference is that the other team, the other two, the goalie and the mid, go out the other tunnel and kind of wait 1 to 2 seconds before they actually joust. That way, hey,
so,
if you win, you're still getting your teammates down there and in position. If not, you can stop and you can get back into your goal very fast.
Yeah, so what you can do is you wait in the tube, and as they're going out, you're going to see both your team come through and the other team come through, and you can kind of get an idea of their speed and how early they come through to have a general idea of who's going to win. You might not be 100%, but you get a general idea, and then you can come out of the tube. Usually you want to go out of the other tube just so you don't risk getting in the way of the people in the same tube. And what you're going to do is you're going to come out. If you guys end up losing, the goalie is able to stop at the shield or on a block or on bow tie, wherever they're choosing or wanting to stop. And then the midfielders, depending on the situation, can stay with them. You can maybe get a bump out towards the disc, or they can go pressure zone with the disc, etc. But they're back and ready to assist with however they're needed on defense. And you're already in that defensive position. Conversely, if you guys end up winning the joust, you can then launch out and start re-grabbing to the other end of the field and be ready down there.
All right. Good. All right. Any questions on that? If not, we'll move to passing.
Do we want to do offensive and defensive joust?
For how tunnel? Yeah, we can go over a bit
At
of.
least defensive. So offensive.
Yeah, I think defensive is more
Oh,
important.
Tool,
than
do you have-
offensive there, Chris?
Toil, do you have a question?
Well, too illegal.
Tweel? Oh.
Toyo.
Alright. Do you have
If you're
a question?
talking, we
If
don't
not-
hear you. If you're talking, we can't hear you.
You know, I think your mic broke. If you don't restart, I'll send you a new mic. No, I can't hear you.
Still nothing.
Yeah. No.
Try to restart the game or restart your request all the way
Yeah.
back.
So, for offensive jousts, that's where you start with a disc. It's pretty straightforward. It's your standard QB thing. I'm sure most of you can see that. There's going to be a lot of pass options you have. Can you talk now? I'm not hearing anything still if you are.
Nah, I'm not hearing anything either.
You didn't accidentally set yourself to push talk if you weren't on it before, right?
Hey,
Oh, there we go. You could have
for a
yourself
second.
You heard like a cough. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. You good?
Alright. Can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Huh? What
did
did-
just go?
I'll go to the bathroom.
Alright, like probably when we were saying offensive to joust, fairly basic. I'm sure all of you ran these thousands of times or 100
There-
kind of you guys get
There's going to be all sorts of things you can get into with how you want to set up, with where people go out and stuff. But we're not going to worry about covering all of those right now. You can watch games and get an idea of what other people do. But I think the one that you see less often is what people do on the defensive joust. You have two main options. One is you go out in two separate pairs, kind of like you do on a initial joust. And in this, you're gonna have. What's up? He's still not. I'm still not here.
Just
So, with this one, you're going to have everyone's going to be coming out of tube 1 usually, and you're going to have your front stack and your back stack. Your front stack goes forward, and they can pressure the QB. They can stop on the double diamond and try to boost after a pass. They have a few options, and what your back stack is going to want to do is they're going to want to delay some on the catapult, just kind of waiting until like right before they pass would be ideal. And you can kind of get a feel for how quickly they like to throw the disc, and that's also going to be based off of how quickly your front stack is. But so then you do a delayed launch coming out of the tube, and the goalie can come up, and they want to be stopping on the nest or bow tie usually, and then the midfielder on his back is going to want to try to pressure one of the tubes. Ideally, the tube that the pass is going to. If the pass is not sent already, you want to they want to throw off into whatever direction they think the pass is going. And so the goal there is they're able to be there and stunning and grabbing the disc as the person is catching the disc, so they aren't ready for the other person to come up behind them at that time. And so that's kind of how that works, and surprisingly effective and not that hard to do. The key is just waiting a couple seconds and launching out. What's up, Gizmo?
Is it better to pull off the catapult on, well, basically immediately after you launch, or do you wait to the end?
Immediately after the quickest when you're on here. A lot easier to show rather than. If you hit launch the catapult and you wait until here, you're getting that roughly 14 meters a second as you come out of the tunnel. Thing is about the catapult, it reaches max speed as soon as you push the button. So if you pull off and push the button at the same time, I'm hitting that speed that I want to hit.
Yeah. So you should be going at ideally 10.0 meters per second as you come out. And if you watch your speed indicator as you come out of the catapult, you'll notice the second you hit that button, it's just pinned at 6 for the entire duration. And so no matter when you throw off the catapult, you're going to be going at 10 meters per second. But if you throw off in the first second versus the second or third second, you're going to be a couple seconds ahead.
Gotcha.
So pulling off it as soon as possible is best.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Back to defense and just quickly, like Alduine was saying, there's two main points. You have the kind of where your strikers are stacked and then kind of boosting around, and then you have your two back runners. Or there's a different one that people like to use, which is essentially the same man-on-man style that you use in bubble. Amplified throughout the entire field. So you have one person and try to pressure the QB, one person covering the guy on the left and the guy on the right, and then you have your fourth person who's the goalie covering the furthest pass. This leaves them with no pass options. It doesn't give them any options. Thing is, if they get by one of your players, since you have everyone on everyone, you essentially have an open goal, or near open, or one at the most. It's a lot more effective when you do it right, but it's also a lot more risky if you do it wrong.
And so the way you'll see that a lot is the goalie will be on the catapult usually, and then you'll have a 3-stack ready to PE out of the tube. The PE stack comes out and they'll split one person to left tube, one person to right tube, and one person to the QB, and then the goalie can come up usually to the bow tie in this scenario, and if anyone comes through, they want to be moving off in a course to intercept that pass and also being ready to push back to the goal if something gets through.
That's your basic kind of defensive launch.
Yeah, those are the two launches you'll see, and I recommend. Teams will have their own specific plays they'll do, but those are kind of the generic stuff that you should focus on. Just master those and then look on developing your own plays or stealing other teams' plays.
I mean, he's not wrong. Alright, any other questions about that? Alright, looks like we're good to move on. So, passing is, I wouldn't say it's hard to do, but it's a lot more complicated than you first think. Your first thought's, hey, someone's sitting over there, I'm just gonna pass it right to him, but there's different, essentially, ways you need to pass. This is all more of the complex nature of it anyway. If I have a teammate who's, this is very relevant in the cut actually, if I have a teammate who's coming up, like, if you want to give me an example, we'll just go slow, but he's coming into bubble, I don't want to pass where he is there, it's going behind him. You need to lead your pass, essentially. So he's going forward, I gotta make sure I pass, meet him at a point where he's still moving. So he's still moving, I'm gonna throw it roughly there, and it meets him as he's moving forward.
And then in an even more extreme scenario, if I'm coming in and so I'm coming up and he throws it to me, if I'm flying this way and he throws it a little bit behind me, I can kind of reach back and grab it. But in a more extreme scenario, say I'm coming up and I have someone right behind me, but he needs to get the pass off to me, he needs to make sure that not only does he throw it kind of at where I will be, but he actually wants to throw it a little bit ahead of me so I can reach up this way and I don't need to slow down and get it behind me, falling into the opponent on my back. And so that's a much more advanced mechanic, but it's just like one of the variables that you'll see pretty frequently.
That goes along with, if you ever heard the term being stride, it's like as you don't want them to drop speed, essentially, trying to maintain that same momentum. Leading passes and figuring out, like, too legal. Can you mute your mic? It's going really buzzy.
Or put yourself on push to talk as well.
Like I was saying, passing, when to lead your pass, when to not, that's actually very important once you figure out what it is. There's an even more kind of complex way of passing that I'll touch on for a split second, but it's kind of hard to notice. Say Alduine, sit on this block here.
Okay.
If he's there and there's a defender pushing from the pillar out towards him, I don't want to put the disc in front for him to jump towards goal. The defender's I don't want to hit him while he's on that block because the defender's still too close, doesn't give him time. I want to actually put it behind him, so I pull him backwards and kind of take some of the pressure off. You got to figure out where you want to put the disc exactly for the enemies to not get it while also helping your own team. Instead of just lobbing the disc and panic.
And that's where cutting can be a little bit harder in some ways than normal passing. It's really close, so that takes out a lot of the difficulty. But one of the keys when you're passing is to be open for a pass. I don't want to be sitting right here, because if he goes to throw it at me, I can't really do much to move around for. I kind of just have this, and that's about everywhere I can grab. Conversely, if I was sitting here and he were to throw it all the way up at shoulder real quick, I can now jump out and get it. Which, if he were to throw it that far from me when I wasn't holding onto a block, there's no way I could make it there.
Exactly.
And so staying anchored on something at all times and just kind of moving between surfaces is really important. That way you're always able to jump off quickly when something comes by you, because your passes aren't going to be spot on every single time, no matter what level you're playing at.
You got a question?
Basically wait until they're grabbing a block to do most of your passes. Or pass behind.
That's on the person who's receiving the pass. They should know that, hey, I'm not going to get it, so I need to be so I can jump around to wherever I need to.
So there are scenarios, particularly like when you're coming down the field, that people might not be stopped. And so then you just need to get the pass off on the moving target, but just know that when you're throwing at a moving or floating target, your pass needs to be much more accurate than if they were anchored somewhere.
Gotcha.
The other thing is, if someone's not covered, you don't need to throw a 19-meter-per-second pass at them. Even if someone is covered, a lot of times you don't need to throw it super fast. Accuracy is much more important than speed.
Accuracy more important than speed. Gotcha.
Yes.
Always. If
Because
you can hit the goal at a 16 from tunnel, and would you rather hit it as a 16 from tunnel, or would you rather miss at a 19? It's fairly basic. That
You
part.
say
Anyway.
that as if 16's a regular shot.
I mean, a 19 is my regular shot, so I'm kind of
Jeez.
little biased in that part.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
All right, is there any more questions about passing and the types, or whenever you have to lead, whenever you don't?
I
Alright.
do have a question.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, what's up?
a lot of times, our forwards, our strikers, will just lob the disc when they get into a panic, and they're not turning backwards to look for back passes back to the keeper. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Okay, so that's call-outs. Your team needs to get good at call-outs. And so I'm sure you guys have heard the green, yellow, red terminology.
Yep.
So yellow is the most ambiguous one. I'm not going to really cover that too much. If you can utilize it well, it's good, but you have to be really careful because a lot of times you'll call yellow when they're actually red. And so just be cautious of that. But green and yellow, you should always call a lot. Or sorry, green and red, you should always call a lot. I'm sure you guys call red frequently when someone's coming up on the disc. Someone's gonna be yelling red so that he knows I'm here. Conversely, if I'm all the way back here and we're both going that way or something, you shouldn't just say nothing. You should be calling. If he's open, be yelling green at him so that he doesn't panic and just get rid of the disc, not knowing if something's going on. Because the lack of information can be just as dangerous as having a person on you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so something you
let me
don't
add
see much
another-
is those green callouts. And if you really utilize the green callouts and the red callouts, that'll be really good. And if you give a red callout, give a pass option. This will usually be the goalie. If you're coming up, a lot of times the goalie will be the open pass. And so calling out reset bow, red, etc. Just getting them to know, hey, here's your pass option, and you need to get rid of the disc in whatever order. You can call red first or where the pass is first, but just make sure you get both pieces of information out so they know where to throw it. And then just know that, especially on a reset pass, they don't need to throw it fast. It's going away from everyone on the other team. And so just a slow pass back there, and then that can take out for a lot of the inaccuracy as you're throwing something behind you to a target that you don't necessarily see. As well as if someone's going for a disc and it's going to be really tight, making sure to not just call out red, but to call out like a slap and a slap direction, like slap bow tie, slap nest, etc. Slap back double. Those are all really good call outs as kind of an even extreme case of a red scenario.
So, what about in this scenario? And this is not a good scenario, but if I'm in a pub and I'm playing forward and I'm not getting call out, right? Should I be actively turning around and looking backwards
Yes.
as a forward?
You should be doing
You
that.
should be
if
doing
you
that
are
whether your
doing
team is giving you 10 call outs a second or if they're never calling out.
that. You should always in your head have a map of the arena on where your teammates are. You should always, even with that, you should be able to close your eyes and still know, hey, there, and there.
Yeah. And like, as me as a goalie, I'll be sitting in the goal. I'm going to be not only tracking my teammates, I'm going to be tracking every single player on the field and watching their positions, where I think they're moving, possible pass lanes, what's dangerous, etc. And just trying to map out everything that's going on and could be going on is really important. Think of it as like playing chess in real time. You're trying to think 5 moves ahead, where a move is happening every second.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And you need to be watching the entirety of the board. It's not easy, and I know I don't do it perfectly, but the better you get at it, the better off you'll be.
Going back to keeping track of where your teammates are, as you move up to a higher level, you'll be able to actually just know where the enemies are as well, using that same sort of just memorization of where. But that's a lot harder since obviously they're trying not to be seen or tracked everywhere they go. They're essentially working against you rather than calling out and telling you where they are. If that makes sense. Alright, I'm pretty sure we went over everything we had. If there's any other... I know you guys put us a few questions. I'm actually going to check those real quick.
I can go over one quick kind of meta thing. So, especially at lower levels, you'll find the meta, particularly for the goalie, will change a lot as you go. I came up through the rankings very quickly, and so in a very short period of time, I got to see all the way from the below meta or below bronze meta all the way up to the master meta. And especially as you're going up through those bronze and silver ranks, there's a large disparity in speed of teams. One team might have much worse shots, but they're much faster, and they'll win some games because of that. And so the skill of teams will change drastically between each of your games. And so knowing if a team is consistently faster than you, as the goalie, you might want to play a little bit farther back than you would, but you also want to make sure that there's kind of a dead zone where you can be too far back that you can't get forward to boost with your teammates, but still too far up that you can't get back to the goal before the opposing team does. And that just takes some practice with, and I should have a boot camp coming up that's going to be going over that stuff in more detail soon. But it's something to keep in mind, and the pacing of the games will change a lot. Just be cautious. If a team is faster than you by a noticeable margin, really try to reduce the amount of clears you do and just general clear and boost strategies, because you might be turning the disc over every 30 seconds, but you're just clearing it down there, and they're boosting there, getting it back here. And so they're going to win just because, yes, you're clearing it out all the time, but they're just getting possession back instantly and coming back to pressure you. And so that's something to just really watch out for and be careful of clearing if the team is faster than you.
Alright, I know Gizmo, you had a question about how to counter players who are juking. That's a fun one. Alduine, do you best to juke out over Nest?
Huh?
Just like try to get past me while I'm just trying to get the disc from you. I have nothing. If it's a dead space, if you're just trying to float at each other, you gotta guess what he's gonna do.
Yeah,
and try to counter him.
You have, if anyone's like running in play space, they're like taking like 5-10 steps in a direction, they're exploiting. That is not allowed, and they will get in trouble for that. And that is definitely something that is reportable. However, with that said, you will see, especially at lower levels, people will duck or jump or sidestep, and you just need to be able to, when they do that, be able to follow their motion and keep up with them. The one thing to keep in mind, there's a common strategy that's staircasing, which is basic. I'm not very good at it, but it's...
What?
And so...
That's while you're going straight down, just ducking.
What I'm doing is I'm ducking and standing while moving down or up. And the key is I'm moving down just as fast as if I was just doing this. But what ends up happening is I'm doing that and I duck. So all of a sudden I'm moving faster this way, then I stand and I'm moving slower. And so it looks like I'm really speeding up and slowing down, but my net speed is the same. So if someone does that to you, know that they're just going as fast as they can in that direction, and just do that. Don't try to read their staircase. Just move down with them. And that is how you can counter players like White Fox.
In terms for trying to go off someone who jukes, if you can get to a block, like Alduine, try to go past me again, but this time I'm going to be anchored on Nest. If I'm here, he can jump all he wants. I can still grab him as he goes past me. I can move without having to move the block.
Yeah, so...
If he tries to jump me here, I just push up.
When you're ever in a situation where the person on the block always has the advantage. So conversely, if I'm going to pressure single shot and he has the disc trying to come in for a goal, if I'm coming in, he's able to throw off before I'm able to, in a faster and quicker motion than I'm able to. And so being on that block gives you a huge advantage. So be cautious about approaching people who are anchored onto something when you are not.
That's as you start to play more and you recognize how players play. There's a lot of times where instead of trying to challenge someone in the tunnel, I'll wait for them on like one of those blocks that you can see there. Just wait for them to try to juke me, jump and grab the disc. It works on even the highest level players that try to do that.
Along those lines, how far away should I wait for someone? So if they have down here, right, they're hanging out on the floor, all the surface area in the world, right, and they're just hanging out, and I'm like, say, on left route. How should I hang out there, even if he's just has all the space in the world here?
Assuming his other passes are covered by your teammates, he's gonna have to push past you to get to goal. You can just wait here. Challenging someone on the floor is a bit different because you both have like the same amount of area to bounce around.
Yeah, and so in that case, if you're not covering, so if you were there with the disc and trying to get it, and there's an open teammate on shoulder, I'd want to be here. But if you don't have that open pass, there's no reason I shouldn't be down on the floor as well. But as Single said, I don't need to come out to you, as then if you get a sun off on me or get past me, I'm more out of play than I would have been if I was doing the same thing from right here.
So if the guy with the disc literally just sits here and waits and isn't passing it, should I just sit there and wait for him to make a move?
If you guys have a lead in points, yes. If you even have 1 point more, then you can play patient.
Tell you what,
If however, someone's just sitting back, not moving, and you're down points, you will need to eventually push him.
Yeah. That's when you make sure you have everything covered and then take the smartest push you can.
What if
You're gonna
another
say something?
person- Yeah, I just had a game where basically someone did that, and like I stood here, and one of my teammates just came up from above.
That works, except like we were saying earlier, as you get to the higher levels, I know where everyone in this arena is.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna know there's someone above me. If nothing else, by context clues, you can hear even just this little thruster. You can hear this from a long ways away.
Gotcha.
You can hear someone grabbing an object. You can hear pretty much everything. Sound's your greatest ally in this game.
I should probably get headphones on.
I would recommend it. Yes.
Something to do that actually.
If it's a one-on-one, like you have no goalie, no other teammates, just you and him, I would go all the way back to where he's gonna have to come off the floor. Like he's gonna if you go here, he's gonna eventually have to come off the floor to take the shot, assuming pure one-on-one.
And the key is
No
you don't
other
want to be in a
passes.
situation where you pressure him, where if he gets past you, he has an open 3.
Yes.
So if you're ever the farthest person back, you want to make sure that you're not pressuring them while they're outside of the 3-point area, because then if they get past you, they have a wide open net for 3 points.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, there was another question I saw people were asking for how we practice things, and this will probably be the last thing we go over because we're stretching on time nearly to an hour and a half now. Let's see, where do we want to start? Let's go with, nice. Let's go with where we would start for boosting practice. May I see that? Where one of my teammates, since I assume we can't go with the conventional how my team practices because we actually use combat to practice boosting. But how we would do that, how we would practice in the arena is we go from here, we boost all the way down, curving through the left tunnel and coming up back at their nest. Essentially, so it's not just a straight line boost. Just take a turn, a curve, anything. We'd do that a few times, and then we'd have a teammate kind of just throw the disc down, and we chase after it. So you always just kind of get in the habit of knowing where your teammate is going to boost because you've done that 1,000 times.
Something to keep in mind with that sort of stuff. I don't know how consistent your regrabs are, but for now, if you don't have perfectly consistent regrabs, what I'd recommend is go from inside of your tube, boost perfectly straight and as fast as you can out to the other team's top tube, and then come back into your tube as fast and straight as you can, and keep doing that until you get really good consistency.
I too were assuming you already knew how to, you knew you were going to pull straight. Mine was more advanced. So that's definitely something you need to practice. If you're not consistent with your regrabs, then don't work on this other stuff.
Yeah, so the turning thing is really useful in games, especially. And it's something to definitely work on practicing, but you want to make sure you have the fundamental of boosting down first if you don't already.
All right. Positioning. Let's the way we did with how my team does their like half warm up, half positioning. We'd have someone sitting back. We just work up and down the field, calling out where you are every time someone gets near the disc. So, yeah, I would just instantly hit the pass to him. Before he even gets it, I would call out where I am and where he has the next pass. And you would just throw it to where the quickest. Yeah, exactly. So he would always be in line with me. You just kind of get into the knowledge of, oh, he can't see me. He has nowhere to throw it to.
Reset shoulder, etc.
That's what we do, yeah.
Passing all the way down the field, going up, taking that shot, and immediately turning around and coming back.
We do this like 10, 20 times a session anyway.
Yeah. We do like solid 20, 30 minutes of it usually.
Yeah. So what other things did we touch on? We talked about how you would practice cuts. There isn't really a way to practice bubble defense on your own. That's just something. The more times you scrim, the more time. Yeah, that's not on your own though. Let's get honest.
If you guys are, can we talk about that?
Talk about what?
Scrim organizer.
Oh yeah, it's been posted on the community service list for a while now.
If you're on a team and you're looking for teams to scrim, there is a channel in the official Discord now for scrims, but what most teams use, there is a scrim organizer Discord that if you go to the Echo Arena Discord in the channels page or community channels or something,
Community
it's up somewhere
servers, yeah, it's like the third channel.
There is an option there to private message a few people on Discord, and you can get into the scrim organizer channel, and that's where most teams go, and they'll be like, hey, we're looking for a scrim Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Is anyone up to scrim us? Etc. And getting those scrims in is huge. It's just more playtime against other teams, and in my opinion, 80% of your games should be at teams around your skill level. 10% of your games should be against teams above your skill level because you can see how you guys do under pressure and try to work on that stuff. And 10% of the games should be with teams below your skill level because you can go in and when you're against a team at lower level than you, you can really focus on just playing cleanly. Don't make any mistakes, basically.
Gotcha.
For bubble offense, what I know some teams just like take a few people, go and do the bots and just kind of throw around in the bubble. But their bots only 3-on-3, so that doesn't work when you have your whole team. Again, scrim's your primary form of practice in that case. You can talk theory all day long, but you have to actually test it out somehow in some way.
I hate bots.
Our man on man.
I don't know. That again, that's just man on man's just bubble defense that you'd have to practice in a scrim. I don't believe there's because you can't even really go into pubs because the other team won't know how to play against this. You won't get anything.
Okay.
That's just my opinion anyway. If there's any part that you guys want to know practice of, let us know now so we can just let you know in case we're missing anything.
A lot of the shooting, if you're trying to work on accuracy or anything, that's something you can do by yourself. Go out, work on angles. One thing you can do is instead of trying to shoot at the goal, sit here or something, try to throw at all the different lights accurately. There are lights all over in weird locations. You can move around to different spots and try to hit as many of them as you can. They're very small targets, so it's not easy to do, but it's a good thing to work on for practicing. For shooting on a goalie, practicing cuts, any of that sort of stuff, that's something you can really easily do as a team. Come in, take shots on your goalie. That gives the goalie practice. That gives your shooters practice. Work on cut plays. Same thing, practice for everyone in their respective positions, etc. And then another thing for boosting that we'll do is we'll take the disc and just chuck it somewhere randomly and try to boost after it. That allows us to work on reading the bounces as well as our boosting simultaneously.
Alright. If there's anything else we want to go over, what's up, Spider?
I just said makes sense.
Okay. If there's anything else you want to go over last minute, now's the time.
Is there anything else that anyone is wondering of a specific skill they can practice that they're wanting to work on?
Most of the skills I want to practice are team skills, so hard to do
Oh,
that
yeah.
on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
so,
know that.
so
know
that'll
that
come
one.
down to just coming in here and doing miscellaneous stuff as well as organizing scrimmages.
And
Um,
since the title of this is technically competitive team basics, one thing that is going to be helpful for your team is set 2 or 3 nights a week where you all hop on at the exact same time that you know everyone's going to be on, because then you can just put scrims in those slots. Even if you don't get a scrim at that time, you know there's like a team practice, so you have everyone on the same page, so they get into the habit of saying, hey, this is game time, we're doing something important at this time on this day.
Yeah, and so usually like what we'll do for that is we meet every Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 6 and 7 p.m. Pacific. And so we'll come in, we'll practice some drills or whatever for an hour, and then usually once or twice a week we'll have a scrimmage during one of them, and that'll be a 2-hour block at that same time frame.
What are your thoughts on mixed scrims? So if we pick 8 p.m. Eastern,
Not as
and
they are good. If you can get a full scrim, it is better.
They're like this. I'd put them as, if you can't find a scrim, like you should always obviously be looking for a scrim in that time frame. But if you can't, or if it's like last minute, a mixed scrim should be fine. As long as everyone takes it seriously, you'll be okay. It'll be good for you guys.
makes sense.
Oh,
As long as you don't have the people who just go in and mess around, because you won't get anything if your opponents don't try.
And also don't be afraid if you're in a scenario that it's like, hey, we really want to do a scrim this week, but this person's not able to do anything. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, can we get a sub for a scrim? I wouldn't ping like the official league subs or anything, but you can ask that in the scrim organizer Discord, asking for a sub for a scrim, etc. So if someone isn't able to make it or anything, or you really want to do a scrim but only 3 people are on, don't be afraid to ask for someone to fill in.
Absolutely, the 3 of you will still get beneficial experience from that.